Ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding applause, please welcome Nigel, Beck. A round of applause.
Thank you. Oh, there it is. Thank you and good morning, everybody. So when I got up this morning, I put on my suit. It was a blue suit, it wasn't a black suit, and I put on my tie. My tie is quite tight. I'm still carrying a bit of COVID weight. So I've taken it off, and I look more like a futurist now, and I'm also not constricting my brain. One thing that people often ask me is, how did you get into sustainability and sustainable finance, and how long have you been in this? And perhaps I'm a bit of a futurist in that regard. So I've been in ESG for 20 years now. Long before it was popular, long before it was the flavor of the month. I'd graduated in, I think, 2000 with a master's in environmental technology from Imperial College. Very excited to take on the world, hoping to get a job in this field. There were no jobs, absolutely no jobs. The first job I got was a personal assistant for a small consulting company, working on projects into Africa, and I did that for probably about 6 months. I wasn't a very good PA, to be perfectly honest. But amazing how the world has changed over the last few years. Now, if you look at jobs, there's an immense amount of jobs at a kind of junior, mid, senior level in this space, whether it's climate scientist, social scientist, ESG consultant. I've seen the evolution of this from where it was focused predominantly on compliance, i.e. how would you get a permit to build a project, to looking at it from a risk lens, how do you manage your specific risk in the company, through a business lens, within a bank from a sustainable finance lens, how do we come up with products, how do you use it to innovate products, as well as to looking at strategy, how do you integrate it into strategy? And that's where most companies are going now. It's forward-looking, it's integrating your sustainability strategy and your financial strategy to make you relevant. So what are the key drivers of ESG and sustainability? And there's a number of pull factors. The first pull factor is there's increased investor interest. Previously, investors, when they looked at kind of ESG, they did what we call negative screening. They screened for what we call the sins, tobacco, arms and ammunition, et cetera, and they tried to keep those out of their portfolios. What we're increasingly seeing now is investors looking actively at their portfolios and building them, taking into their portfolios, for example, green bonds, social bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, and a number of these type of instruments. There's significant interest both globally, but also within Africa. I'm constantly phoned by investors asking, how can they invest in these type of things? When are we bringing the next one to market? Almost all investors say that climate issues are likely to impact their investment performance over the next 2 to 5 years. Almost all investors, that is. And so what that means is we are starting to see outperformance of certain ESG or sustainable indexes. So if you look at this chart on the top right, which I'm sure the economists would find very interesting, they like a good chart. In 2018, 2019, when we first started to hear about sustainable finance, kind of ESG, there was outperformance of the orange line. So the orange line is the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for emerging markets. The black line is the S&P Emerging Markets Index. So it's kind of the sustainable index over its benchmark. There was slight outperformance. Then we moved into the COVID years. There was an inversion in the COVID years. Obviously, during that time, there was not much to be done. It was quite difficult. I remember at that time speaking to a lot of clients from behind my desk. We tried to launch sustainable finance, and there was interest in it, but obviously it was quite difficult. Then we moved into the start of the Russian-Ukrainian war. There was a bit of volatility, but as you can see now, from 2022 onwards, there's an uncoupling of those two. We're starting to see significant outperformance of these sustainable indexes and these ESG indexes. So that's the first thing driving this. The second thing is there are global pools of capital that are moving from the global north into the global south. Last year at COP28, $85 billion was mobilized in climate finance from emerging markets, from developed economies into emerging markets. We're not only seeing that within the green. For example, the African Union has launched the Challenge Fund. That's to strengthen kind of job creation across the continent. So it's not just green, there's also adaptation funds, there's job creation. What we need to be doing is we need to be tapping those pools of capital and directing that money into the continent, because we're competing with other emerging markets for those pools of capital. The third aspect and the third pull factor is we're seeing growing consumer pressure. There's more and more information available to the man in the street. To the extent that a consumer sees human rights abuses in a supply chain, they're going to avoid a specific product, or they're going to avoid a specific client or company. Information is becoming more and more available. If you go to ShopRite and you go and buy a sandwich or a packet of crisps at the moment, you turn over